Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. I'm Dan Stilgo, Marketing Manager at Blend, and I've got a solo episode for you today. I'm all on my own in the studio, and I'm going to be talking about retargeting, which to me feels like the ugly sister of retargeting that doesn't get enough love. So it's interesting because everybody wants to talk about the flashy campaigns that create new demand and attract new leads, but retargeting is usually the workhorse that actually delivers better return on investment and is usually the best place to start in terms of B2B advertising for most businesses. So in this episode of Demand Decoded, we're going to cover how and why you should and can be using retargeting today to improve your conversion rates and ultimately drive more pipeline and revenue for your business. So let's get into the episode. This podcast is brought to you by Blend. We're a B2B website and demand generation agency. We work with ambitious businesses just like yours to create and execute effective demand generation strategies that drive pipeline for your business. We also recognize that your website is the most important asset you have in marketing. So we specialize in building scalable websites on HubSpot that convert the demand that you've created. If you want to find out more about our services and see real results that we've generated for businesses, visit blendb2b.com. So first, I actually just want to quickly cover off what retargeting is. I assume most people listening to this podcast are aware of retargeting, but there are obviously a few different forms of retargeting that you might not be aware of. So I just want to quickly cover those off. So as we know, the core definition of retargeting is essentially the practice of serving targeted ads to people that have visited our website, used an app, interacted with your content or brand in some way, are part of a list perhaps, and didn't complete a desired action that revealed them to you in a first-party data kind of way. This typically works in a few different ways. So firstly, you have cookie-based retargeting, which is when somebody visits your website, you have the cookie pop up. If they accept that, then a small piece of code, usually JavaScript, is placed in their browser. And this essentially enables and allows retargeting providers to show ads specifically to them based on that piece of code that you've added. Then we've got the more familiar pixel-based tracking. So, things like LinkedIn ads use this, where similarly to cookies, pixels are a small code snippet also placed on your website that trigger when a specific action occurs. So like visiting a key page or clicking a button, something like that, which then enable those ad platforms and channels to identify those users later because it's associated with their browser. Then finally, one that's maybe forgotten a lot of the time is list-based retargeting. So using an existing or new list of users, actual customer details or companies too, which is probably the more common choice. And we'll get on to a few different ways that you can use those. But aside from just looking at people that have visited your website, you also have numerous other ways to think about retargeting. When we think about the psychology behind retargeting ads, there are a few reasons why it works so well. The first one is pure exposure, right? And I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but B2B buyers need a certain amount of exposure to your brand before they can make a buying decision. And that is usually a lot. We're talking, 10, 20 plus interactions with your brand. I'm sure it's much higher, and there's a Gartner report on this which shows it, and it's a lot of touch points with your brand, and retargeting allows you to get a lot of those touch points with your potential buyers, and that will stand you in good stead when it comes to buying triggers happening and being placed at the forefront of like vendor lists and things like that, because your brand is associated with a particular problem and is at the forefront of people's minds. Then you've got the trust building side of things. One single interaction with your brand probably isn't enough to build enough trust to sell into somebody in a complex B2B purchase, which might take 9 to 12 months. Now, retargeting allows you to develop that trust by displaying different messages and social proof to your visitors and your audience in order to build up that affinity for your brand. Then the other point is just reducing friction in the purchase journey. When you think about it, retargeting gives you an opportunity to display whatever message you like, different kinds of messages to your ideal buyer that are already aware of your brand. The way I like to put it with people is if you could choose 2, 3, 4, 5 things to say to every single buyer that comes to your website, and you could tell them those things, what would they be? Because you can then use those in retargeting as your core messages to get those things across to your buyer. So it's really reducing the friction in the journey, because they will learn about your brand, they will learn about your product, the benefits, the features through your retargeting messaging, and that purchase journey is a lot more seamless and fluid when a buyer is already brought in and knows those things. In B2B specifically, retargeting plays an even bigger role because of the long purchase journeys. When you think of it, B2C, e-commerce, very quick, transactional, almost instantaneous sometimes when you're looking for a product and you buy it straight away. B2B purchases can be anywhere from, well, instant to 3-5 years at times. But I'd say, a typical B2B sales cycle that we see is between 3 months and 18 months. 18 being on the longer side, more typical being 6 to 9 months. Now, when you're talking about those kind of lengths, you want to be in front of the buyer during that journey, during that sales journey, and during that buyer journey and decision-making process. You want to make sure that your brand is at the forefront of their mind and that they are constantly seeing your best message, your best work, your best case studies and results, and everything about that. You want to make sure that your brand is always in front of them at all times. And if you're aware of the companies that you actually want to retarget and get a key message in front of, then you can do that within the same organization structure. Because when you think about it, B2B purchases and decision-making processes are quite complex and often involve a wide range of stakeholders, not just the direct person you're dealing with. So if you have a company list, for example, you can upload that and target all of the relevant people at that business that you want based on a number of criteria. So not only are you influencing one person that you're in direct contact with, but your brand is being exposed to all of the key decision makers within that buying committee. There are some misconceptions when it comes to retargeting. One that I see a lot is that a lot of marketers associate retargeting with B2C, abandoned carts and those kind of things. But in B2B, we can think about retargeting in many, many different ways, which we'll get onto. And that some that I've spoken to feel that it's quite stalky and that you're almost stalking visitors and buyers across the internet with your message. And this is a big no-no. And again, we can dispel that myth by looking at conversion rates and actually having feedback from buyers about retargeting. Us as users of the internet, of social media apps, are exposed to ads all the time. And it's no surprise now to see ads and being retargeted by websites that we visited and by brands that we've heard of and seen. We're almost desensitized to it, and it's really nothing that we need to worry about anymore because it's just expected and a complete given these days. The other thing is that retargeting needs big budgets in order to follow people around. That couldn't be more untrue. Actually, retargeting often uses a lot smaller budgets because the audience is much, much tighter, and especially if you drill down even deeper on your retargeting audience, say you have a website visitor audience of 90-day visitors and it's 5,000, for example, you might filter that down even deeper by different industries, company sizes, job titles. I'm thinking LinkedIn ads here. And that's going to give you a much more refined list. And of course, targeting a list of that size requires less budget in order to, have your desired impressions or clicks back to your website. Okay, so why should you actually use retargeting in your marketing strategy? Now, I think the number one use case here is to improve conversion rate on your website, specifically conversion rate for high intent buyers to actually reach out and convert via like a demo request or talk to sales, whatever it may be, that high intent action on your website. And we've seen that typical high intent conversion rates on websites are around 1%. And retargeting can help improve that to, 1.5, 2%, we've actually seen in some studies. And when you're talking about conversion rates like this, finite incremental improvements in that conversion rate can be the difference between 10, 20, 50 leads in some cases, depending on the volume of traffic that you're actually getting to the website. So whilst it may seem like, oh, we're only improving website conversion rate by 1%, that 1% can, well, it's a 100% increase ultimately, and can have a huge impact on the volume of high intent leads that you're actually getting from your website simply by utilizing your existing audience. You're not paying to create a new audience here. You're just leveraging the audience you already have. You're doubling down on the audience you've created through events, through cold LinkedIn ads, through organic search, through paid search, all those other channels, all of those people that are coming to your website, you can retarget and convert at a much higher rate. Another reason why is that marketers, all of us, will have experienced the short-term pressure that comes with sales team and ultimately targets, end of quarter, end of year, whatever it may be. We might, have somebody come to us and say, we need to increase high intent leads pipeline by this amount by this date. And simply running a brand awareness campaign that is intended to influence an audience to buy from you in 6, 9, 12 months time, it's not going to have the desired effect here. So retargeting can be that thing that you can turn on really quickly to influence the audience you've already created and convert them at a higher rate already, because that's going to give you a better short-term result and short-term impact than a cold campaign to a completely new audience. And you'll see this if you set up 2 different campaigns in LinkedIn, one for cold, one for retargeting. The retargeting campaign is likely to get conversions within the first month. And that's just because, okay, some of those people might have converted anyway, but you're giving yourselves a much better chance at having those convert and having more of those convert on the website overall. And wouldn't you rather that than leave it to chance that they might convert? You need to give yourself the best chance possible that you're going to convert as much traffic from your website or whatever the targeting parameters you set. You want to convert as much of that as possible. So retargeting can really help your short-term gains whilst thinking about the long-term plays when it comes to, brand and demand creation and all those things that we need to do but don't move the needle short-term. When I think about retargeting, I think of it as an amplification tactic and strategy, because you've got all of your other marketing investments, and we know how much is spent on things like events, things like paid search. We're talking millions and millions here. And if you're spending $1 million on different events, all of that traffic being filtered to your website when you create the demand, when you speak to somebody, when you capture their details and send them information afterwards, don't you want to make the most of that investment? Don't you want to amplify that investment and really maximize your existing marketing investment? Because that's what retargeting can get you to. You're already spending all this budget on acquiring that new audience, and you need to make it work hard for you. You need to be kind of squeezing every ounce that you've invested elsewhere, and retargeting for a limited budget compared to everything else can really make you squeeze the value that you've invested elsewhere. Okay, so we've covered the why, and it's clear that retargeting absolutely has a place in most B2B marketing strategies and should be used. Now, let's quickly cover when to use it, because whilst I think it's great and most businesses do have the opportunity to use retargeting, it's not the best thing to implement for everybody straight away, because after all, most retargeting is based on website traffic, and some businesses don't have great website traffic. They're struggling to get 1,000 visits a month. So any retargeting audience, when you take into account cookies and actual in-platform usage, like on different social channels, they can't develop a big enough audience to even run retargeting in the first place, or a big enough audience for it to be effective. So I would say, rule of thumb, if you have less than 1,500 visits to your website, you could maybe get away with 1,000. Then it's unlikely that you'll be able to build up a big enough and strong enough filtered retargeting list that you can actually benefit from and increase your conversion rate from. So you want to be focusing that budget and that effort on increasing traffic to your website in the first place and having a new audience being created. Because let's remember, retargeting is there to improve the conversion rate of our existing audience, people that are already aware of us and that we want to convert into customers ultimately, but pipeline first. So the first place to think about retargeting, of course, is your website, like we've mentioned. You want to be setting up retargeting audiences on the relevant ad platforms for you. I'm talking more about LinkedIn here because that's where I'm comfortable. That's where we see the most value for B2B businesses. But if there are other channels relevant for you, like Reddit, Meta, Google Display Network, then you can look into those too. But in terms of LinkedIn ads, I'd be creating audiences straight away for 30, 90, and 180-day visitors to make sure that you're building up those lists as soon as possible so you can use them for your retargeting campaigns. Then still thinking about LinkedIn, we've got things like company page views. So that audience that have actually viewed your company page profile on LinkedIn, they've shown kind of some intent and some interest in your brand. So you want to be making sure that you're staying in front of those too. Then we've got company lists. So it may be an ABM style list that you get from an intent data platform that are companies showing strong buying signals towards your brand, and you can export that company list and run it through a retargeting campaign on LinkedIn, for example. We've then got one of my favorites, which is running retargeting campaigns to in-pipeline accounts. This can be really effective where you've got complex and large buying committees, because whilst you might have one direct buyer that you're in communication with, you might have 10 other people in different departments that influence the purchase decision. So an in-pipeline list allows you to export companies that are currently in your pipeline, actively being worked to close, and allows you to target multiple people in that business, even if they haven't been on your website. So if you're marketing to marketers, you might want to target the CFO or the chief revenue officer, whoever it may be. You can set up those parameters in your in-pipeline retargeting list too. So yeah, definitely a way to maximize your reach and your chances of converting that deal, making your chances of converting that deal much higher, because you're influencing more of the buying committee and not just a single person that might not have the seniority or hold the purse strings ultimately. Another type of retargeting that I've heard marketers use with some, good impact, but haven't actually tried it out myself, is to export your connections on LinkedIn and run those through a retargeting list too. This is particularly good for independent, strong personal brands who have a lot of connections and followers and want to retarget those using, paid budget too, because I think something like 10 to 20% of large followings on LinkedIn, for example, will only see your posts. So most of your audience that follow you or are connected with you will never actually see your posts. So these lists give you a way to make sure that a wider audience that already follow you are seeing your content too. A couple of others just to throw out there quick are things like customer upselling and cross-selling opportunities. If you have a big customer base that you can, create a strong retargeting list from, and you want to upsell them and cross-sell them different products, the best way to get started with that and at least have it in your armory is retargeting them with the relevant offers for the cross-sells and upsells that make sense for them too. Of course, you need quite a lot of data here in order to narrow down what the right fit is for that, but definitely a way to do it too. Similarly, if you're kind of launching new products in the space and you've got customers that you want to be aware of that new product and you potentially want to upsell the new thing to them, having a customer list to also target is a really good way to do that as well. Now I want to talk about creative best practices when it comes to retargeting. And I'm going to be focused on LinkedIn here, but I do think these best practices are cross-platform and can work across all of the retargeting channels really. At least kind of the fundamentals of them, the exact thing that you put in that creative, the design, might be different, but the core message and the thesis that goes behind it will be pretty similar. And the thing that we like to do on this is obviously drink our own Kool-Aid, right? When I talk about retargeting and when we talk about topics on this podcast, it's because we try these things out for ourselves. We test, we iterate on things, and then we show you what we've learned. And we make sure that we're in a position where the things that we've learned are positive, that we ensure that they work, and we've proved them out over a number of different use cases. We make sure they're sustainable and bring you guys the insight. So yeah, let's actually have a look in our Blend LinkedIn account here. And I'm in our retargeting campaign group because I want to talk through some of these creative different variants that we've got in here. So the first two campaigns you'll see here are text ads and spotlight ads. And just for those of you that aren't aware what these are, so text ads and spotlight ads appear on desktop only. And if you're on desktop on LinkedIn, you'll notice that they're on the right-hand side and don't really take up much of the screen space, but are visible. Once you know they're there, you know they're there, and you look at them every time. And occasionally a message or a brand will catch your eye in that space, especially if you're aware of them. So that's why when it comes to LinkedIn ads, text ads and spotlight ads are a fantastic way to stay in front of your buyer. Honestly, sometimes they're basically free. Because if you set these ads up to only pay per click instead of paying per impression, what you'll find is that a lot of buyers don't click on these ads, but they will see them. And your brand and the messages that you want to include in those ads, like let's have a look at these spotlight ones for us. #1 HubSpot website agency, 25 examples of websites built with HubSpot. All of these things are things that our audience cares about and have revealed to us in qualitative data and also in terms of data and what content they're interested in. And we can put those messages in front of those again, in front of those buyers again and again and again. And even if they don't click, that will be consumed. So yeah, I would check those out first. And when it comes to just messaging in these ads and in any ad really, what I would say is that for cold ads, you can potentially push the boundaries a bit more and be a bit more abstract in what you think and what you say and the message and how you deliver that from a design standpoint. But when it comes to retargeting ads, people that are aware of your brand, you want to be quite specific with the message. You want to be running things like social proof, results, stats, key kind of brand headlines and value propositions that relate closely back to your service and product, so that there's kind of no room for ambiguity there, and the benefits of your product and service are clearly outlined. Because let's remember, these people are aware of your brand, and what you want to do is think of those 3 to 5 things again, that if you could tell every single buyer that comes to your website these things, what would they be? They should be the key messages that form your retargeting campaign that you build from after that. Then you might want to be looking at the creative side of things. So if we dip into some of our ads here, we do a lot in terms of social proof and our work and our results and things like that. So that forms part of our retargeting ad, because when people come to us for a website, for example, or for our demand gen work, we want to make sure that we're showing our best work and our best results and what we can truly do for businesses through retargeting too. So that's core messaging for us. One thing that we've seen good success with is ads like this, which are like authentic screenshot style ads, because they disrupt the feed. They don't look like ads. They're really abnormal and weird, but they are so authentic and so trustworthy, because this, for example, is just a screenshot of a customer replying to one of our LinkedIn posts saying about, how great it was to work with us. And we're sharing that to our feed, to our retargeting audience, building so much authentic trust. We're not faking a review there. It's pretty obvious, that this person has openly said those kind words about our business and has been really open in how good we are to work with. So we want to share that with our retargeting audience too, to build up that trust, to build that affinity for our brand. Aside from those image ads, which are, quite diverse in the kind of things we show, a lot of social proof, but some brand recall related stuff here. Actually, if I show the brand recall campaign, We can check that out here, and you'll see, this is very kind of core value proposition and message led here. So, saying exactly what we do, who we are, basically just putting our brand and our core message in front of people again and again and again to associate us with that particular thing. For us, the HubSpot website agency comes across again and again. When people think of HubSpot websites, we want them to think of Blend, which is why we're showing that message again and again to kind of instill that in people, that we're the people, we're the agency that they can trust with those things. The other kind of ad type that you can look at is video ads. Again, here we are quite work driven because ultimately the output and our customers are what people come to us for. So we have things in here like show reels, but also, what customers and key partners have said about us here too. So this is a really great quote from somebody at HubSpot. We've got some of our show reels showcasing our work there, some other customer testimonials in there. And, in here I'd actually be looking at the completion rate and things of videos, but over 1% is really great. So yeah, we've got quite a diverse range of videos there. And what you'll see from this, let me stop sharing that. So what you'll see from this is that our retargeting strategy isn't designed to funnel people down a particular path, because then we get into the dangerous area of creating artificial funnels that just simply don't exist. What I see is that marketers say, oh, well, we'll run this ad type because we want our buyers to learn this about us first, and then they'll probably want this, and then they'll probably want this, and we'll move them down. But in reality, you have no idea where your buyer is on their journey. Just because they visited your website doesn't mean that they're now ready to basically buy and they want to book a demo immediately. They might have just stumbled across the topic for the first time and are just researching a blog, for example. Then we get into, your actual retargeting audience, and if you want to refine that by key page views, for example, just your like pricing page and product pages. But for the sake of this, let's say they were just viewing a blog, for example. That doesn't mean that they're now ready to book a demo. It just means that they're interested in a particular topic. So when it comes to LinkedIn ad creative, my thesis is the same with cold ads, to be honest, give everything to everyone, because we don't know where they're at on their journey. I think you can be slightly more specific when it comes to retargeting ads, because you know that somebody is aware of your brand, and you can be more skewed towards the bottom of the funnel in terms of what you're trying to do, like deliver social proof, results, case studies, those kind of things, but still diversify your creative enough to appeal to the masses, ultimately, to make sure that no matter where somebody is on their buyer journey, you're not pigeonholing them in a particular place where you think they are, because the chances are they're probably not there, and they might have way more knowledge on a topic than you think they do, or way less. So give everything to everyone, let them decide what's right for them. Okay, what's next? This episode seems a bit all over the place. I suppose that's what happens when I'm left solo to my own devices. I don't have Phil or anybody else reeling me in. But we've covered the why. We've covered when you should use it. We've covered creative best practices, give everything to everyone, like we just mentioned, and some tips on particular creative to use there. I suppose the last thing to mention is measurement. How do you actually measure that your retargeting campaigns are having an impact on your business? And the best way to do this, well, a few different ways, but the number one way that you'll get from every single platform is conversion tracking. So the ad platform itself using that pixel, like we spoke about at the start, on your website to identify a key page view in most cases. That's the way that I like to think about it and set it up anyway, which is thank you pages most of the time after demo conversions, high intent website conversions, whatever it may be that you mark as a conversion from that retargeting campaign, setting that up as conversion tracking. That gives you the ability to see view through conversions. So when somebody just sees your ad in the feed, then goes on to convert, and click-through conversions too, which you want to see both of these, because it might be that somebody just sees your message in the feed, they stop, they read it for 10, 20 seconds, and that influences them to come back to your website again in 5-10 days time and then convert. We want to see those, not just the people that click. So conversion tracking is really great to set up and see the influence that your ads are having on high intent website conversions. Then we've got the more complex things like control tests to measure incremental lifts in pipeline and in conversions. So when you turn on retargeting, are you seeing a lift in website conversion rate? Are you seeing a lift in pipeline and in revenue? Well, probably in pipeline, but in closed won, for example, from the retargeting campaigns that you've tested. You'll need to carefully measure when you turn these on and if the lift is there. For most businesses, this might be tricky to see with smaller volumes, but it's worth having that in mind as well and measuring from the point which retargeting was turned on what the conversion rates have been thereafter. You might also get some qualitative information too from salespeople, AEs, whoever it may be, talking to customers that they're seeing your brand everywhere. They're seeing you on LinkedIn, this, that, and the other. If you have call tracking software, call recording software in place, and you can monitor these and look for those key terminology like LinkedIn, ads, that kind of thing, then you'll see hopefully more and more buyers calling out that they've seen your brand in these different places and that they're having an influence, on what they think about you and how they discovered you and really wanted to buy from you in the first place. Okay, let's wrap it up there. It feels like that episode was maybe a little bit all over the place, but hopefully gives you some good insight into why you should really start retargeting, when to use it, some best practices on how you should set it up. And hopefully, I do think retargeting is a really underutilized thing for most businesses and most marketers overlook it, but give it a go, if you can. If you already have good website traffic, definitely give it a go and see if it can improve your conversion rate, because in most places you'll see that it will. So yeah, thanks for tuning into this one, and I'll catch you next time. Bye everyone.